The Cosmic Threshold, An Astronaut's Journey Home by Asia S. Inspired by the times we are in. Summary. In a future where space travel is routine, a lone astronaut embarks on a mission to explore the far reaches of the galaxy. While drifting through the silent void, she notices something odd, a faint reflection of a child's face on the glass of her helmet. It's impossible, she thinks, yet the child seems to be laughing and waving from the confines of a small, colorful capsule drifting nearby. Intrigued, she decides to follow. Little did she know her life and the life of those around her was about to drastically change. Chapter 1. The astronaut was not lost. At least, that is what she told herself. Her ship's coordinates blinked predictably on the console, yet space itself had seemed to shift, as if she had drifted into a forgotten corner of the cosmos. It was then that the face of a child appeared. A child in space, she thought to herself. There it was, smiling from behind the glass of a small, spherical pod, floating yards in front of her ship. No communication, no distress signals, just a quiet and friendly smile. On an intuitive pulse, the astronaut followed the pod, drawn by this inexplicable pull. Hours later, her ship lightly descended onto an uncharted world. Her ship landed in the midst of a vast deserted landscape. As she stepped out of her ship, she saw a single golden tree, humming with a strong vibrational energy. As she approached, she felt a strange warmth, a feeling not of danger, but of invitation. As she cautiously approached the tree, a brilliant pulse of light erupted from its core, and suddenly she saw them. Beings of pure energy, flickering like stars, moving in patterns too complex to comprehend. Her immediate and inexplicable thought was, these beings are not separate from the universe. They are the universe. In their eyes, she saw atoms swirl in luminous orbits, guided by unseen forces. She saw fusion and fission not as science, but as poetry in the illuminated form standing before her. A voice, neither human nor alien, whispered through her mind, "You have always been a part of this." Time seemed to quicken, and then once again the child's face reappeared. Not in the pod this time, but reflected in her own visor. She gasped, realizing she was looking at herself, at the version of her that had once wondered, once dreamed without limits. And then, as if waking from a long sleep, she understood. This journey was not about discovering a new world. It was about remembering the connection between knowledge and wonder, between science and spirit, but most importantly, the knowledge that she was part of. The golden tree pulsed once more, and she felt everything as if in confirmation. The energy of the stars, the dance of the atoms, the quiet wisdom of time itself. They were real. She knew she had not simply traveled through space. She traveled through understanding. She climbed back aboard her ship, and as the engines roared to life, she smiled. The universe was no longer something to be conquered. It was something to be felt and experienced. And for the first time in her life, she was not lonely. She felt as if she truly belonged to the stars. Chapter 2. As the astronaut's ship soared away from the Golden Tree's planet, She felt different, weightless, but not in the way zero gravity allowed. She had been touched by something ancient and wise, something vast. It had changed her. The ship's sensors flickered with a new signal, coordinates forming as if the universe itself was inviting her to follow. Trusting a new unseen force that was starting to guide her, she engaged the engines and drifted through the fabric of space. It was then that a new world emerged from the void. She carefully guided her ship to its surface. As she descended, her breath caught in awe. Below her was a vision unlike anything she had ever seen. Rolling green hills stretched toward the horizon, where a golden sun bathed the land in light. A river, glimmering like liquid silver, carved through the valley. The astronaut stepped out, her boots pressing into the soft grass, and suddenly she knew. This was what the universe had been trying to show her. Not just energy, not just knowledge, but balance. A place where science and soul, progress and peace, intellect and instinct were woven together in something whole. She saw farmers in their fields sharing their harvest freely. She witnessed an artist with an easel, painting the colors of the earth, and musicians who were playing melodies on the street corner, sounds that seemed to echo the rhythm of the stars. And everywhere, people were happy and appeared to be thriving. She turned to the golden sun, its light warm against her face. She felt the same pulse of energy she had felt from the tree. It was radiating with every heartbeat, in every whispered breeze, and every ripple in the river. And for the first time in her long journey through the stars, she removed her helmet. She had found home. Chapter 3. The World of Orus. She learned this planet's name from the wind. Not spoken, not written, simply felt. Orus. The people welcomed her not as a stranger, but as if she was someone they had always known. They led her through the golden fields, their bare feet touching the earth with assurance as well as reverence, their voices carrying songs that sounded to her ears as if they were older than time. She marveled at the homes, not towering structures of steel, but sanctuaries woven into the landscape. Some shaped from living trees, their branches forming walls that breathed. Others carved gently into the hillsides, their rooftops covered in wildflowers, blending into the rolling green. Light moved freely through the open spaces, unburdened by walls, as if no one here had ever feared the night. She asked a young woman, "How does this world exist? Without hunger, without conflict, without fear?" The woman smiled, leading her to the river's edge, where an elder knelt, hands submerged in the flowing water. He did not look up, but spoke as if continuing a conversation that had started long before her arrival. "Because we remember what was forgotten," he said. The astronaut furrowed her brow. "What do you mean?" The elder lifted a single droplet of water on his fingertip. In its reflection, she saw her planet Earth, not as it was now, but as it had been. Lush, unbroken, a world where humans once listened instead of conquered. "Your people thought knowledge and spirit were separate things. They built upward, always reaching for the stars, but never looking down at the roots, and so they lost their balance," he said. The droplet fell back into the water. Horus is not a miracle, it is a memory of what is possible, he said. Her mind reeled. What was this place? A vision of the future? A forgotten past? Or an untouched world where humanity had simply taken a different path? And then she felt it again. That same pulse of the golden tree was here in the air, in the river, in the people. Not just power, but harmony, a force that did not seek to control, but to connect. The realization struck her like a meteor colliding with the moon. We could have this, she thought. Tears filled her eyes. The wars, the greed, the walls humanity had built between themselves and each other, what had it all been for, when this had always been within reach? A gentle hand rested on her shoulder. The young woman smiled. You still can. And in that moment, the astronaut knew her journey was not over. She had not come here to stay. She had come here to remember, because somewhere beyond the stars, Earth was still waiting for its people to remember. The return to Earth. The journey back was unlike the journey there. When she had first left Earth, she had carried the weight of isolation, the vast echoing silence of space pressing against her suit. Now she carried something else, a knowing, not just knowledge, but knowing, like a forgotten melody rediscovered, like the warmth of an old friend's voice after years of absence. Horus had not sent her back alone. The golden light, the energy she had touched on the distant planet, now pulsed within her. She recognized that it was not a thing to be owned, but an energetic current running through all things. She had only needed to remember how to feel it, to connect with it. As her spacecraft entered Earth's atmosphere, the blue planet stretched out beneath her, familiar yet strange. The lights of its cities flickered like fireflies, brilliant but contained. Structures of steel and glass towered upward, reaching, always reaching. She quietly thought, will they listen? Will they remember? The world welcomed her as a returned explorer, a hero of the unknown. Cameras flashed, voices clamored. What did you find? What did you see? She wanted to tell them everything, but how could she explain what could only be felt? She tried to speak of Horus, of harmony, of balance. The scientists listened with furrowed brows, the politicians with polite nods, the reporters with eager pens scratching headlines that would fade by morning. She saw the doubt in their eyes. A single astronaut returning with stories of an impossible world. What did that mean in the face of economies, of governments, of a planet still tangled in its own noise? And for a moment, doubt whispered in her own mind. What if they don't believe me? Or they can't hear it? But then she remembered the elder at the river's edge, the droplet of water, the simple truth. Horus is not a miracle. It is a memory of what's possible. And so she did not argue. She did not try to convince. Instead, she showed them. She walked to the barren fields where soil had turned to dust and placed her hands upon the ground. She whispered to the seeds buried deep, forgotten but waiting, and where she touched, green sprouts of life returned. She stood in the heart of the city where people moved past one another, eyes down, hands clutching cold screens. She played a melody, one she had never been taught but somehow always knew. And as the notes danced through the air, some lifted their heads, some paused, some listened. She found children, and she taught them how to feel the earth beneath their feet, how to breathe with the trees, how to hear the stories carried by the wind. And slowly at first, a few could acknowledge remembering. One afternoon, a political leader, weary of endless debates, suddenly stepped away from his podium and walked outside to place his hands on the soil. Another day, a child planted a single seed and whispered softly to it, just as the astronaut had, and the seed sprouted. And with these events, so did hope. Not overnight, not in a single moment of revelation, but in echoes, in the quiet spreading of truth too deep to be denied. Horus had not been a destination, it had been a reminder, and now Earth and its people were beginning slowly to remember. The tree that was not there. The astronaut had spent weeks, months even, traveling the Earth, planting the seeds of remembering. She had expected resistance, and she found it. She had expected hope, and she found that too. But she had not expected the tree. It stood on the edge of a quiet meadow, tall and golden, its branches stretching wide, its leaves shimmering in the soft afternoon light. She froze. She knew this tree. She had seen it before on Orus. It had been there in the golden fields, its roots entwined with the stories of a world in balance. She had run her fingers over its bark, felt the pulse of life beneath its surface. And yet, she had lived here on Earth as a child, played in these nearby fields, but this tree had never been here before, had it? She stepped closer, pressing her palm against its trunk, warm, alive, real. A gust of wind whisked through the branches, and for the briefest moment, she swore she heard a voice, gentle, knowing. You have always known me. You had only forgotten where to look. Just then, a memory surfaced. A younger version of herself, barefoot in this very field, tracing invisible shapes into the earth with her fingertips, humming a song without knowing why. She had always felt something here, a presence, a pull, but she had never seen the tree. Maybe it was because she had not yet remembered how to see it. She turned slowly, scanning the landscape, and suddenly everything shifted. The world did not change, she did. The grass beneath her feet seemed richer and more vibrant. The air hummed with life, the sky stretched wider, its colors deeper, and the people, those who had begun to listen, to remember, they were changing too, not in shape, not in form, but in presence. Their eyes held something new, or maybe something old. The tree had not appeared, it had always been, hidden in the spaces between memory and remembering, between what was possible and what was believed to be impossible. And now it was here, because she was ready to see it. She stepped back, heart pounding, and whispered, what else have we forgotten? The wind carried her words away, rustling through the golden leaves, and in the distance, beyond what she had once thought was the edge of her world, something stirred, something that indeed was waiting to be seen. The world that was always there. It started with a tree, but it did not end there. At first, she thought it was just her, that she alone had crossed some invisible threshold between forgetting and knowing. But then the stories began. A child in a distant town spoke of seeing rivers glow with golden light at dusk. Though no one else could see it at first, days later others swore they saw it too. Then Stories of fishermen who were casting their nets at dawn, watched in awe as bioluminescent patterns swirled beneath the waves, shapes and symbols that had no name, yet spoke to something ancient within their hearts. And the more people that noticed, the more there was to notice. Ruins, long thought crumbled, stood whole once more, not restored by human hands, but simply revealed, as if they had been waiting beneath a veil of forgetting. Songs sung in hushed voices, passed down through generations, suddenly carried meanings no one had understood before, but now they did. Even the sky changed. The stars shimmered in unfamiliar patterns, forming constellations that had never been recorded, yet felt deeply known. Something was happening, something old, something powerful. She stood beneath the golden tree, watching the world wake up. She could feel it in the air, in the ground beneath her feet. The earth had always been alive, but now it was speaking. The forgotten world was returning. Or perhaps people were returning to it. And somewhere, beyond what they could see, something was watching, waiting. The final veil had not yet lifted, but soon it would. The threshold of return. The world was shifting faster now. What had begun as subtle glimpses, rivers of light, forgotten ruins, whispers in the wind, was now undeniable. Cities shimmered between realities. Forests unfolded into vast, untouched landscapes, and the sky itself seemed to pulse with awareness. But with this awakening came a choice, and not everyone welcomed the return of the forgotten world. There were those who clung to the old ways, the ones built on control, ownership, and power. They feared what they could not govern, feared that this new world would not bend to their will, and they were right. The voice of the earth, ancient, steady, and vast, spoke in ways beyond language, reaching into every heart. You must choose, it said. To fully awaken, they would have to let go. Let go of greed, which had turned life into a thing to be owned. Let go of control, which had chained the natural world to human ambition. Let go of fear, which had kept them from seeing what was always there. But it was not just a loss, it was an exchange. For every letting go, they would gain something far greater. For example, they would gain the ability to co-create with the earth instead of ruling over it. They would gain the power to shape reality, not through force, but through harmony. The return of lost knowledge, buried for centuries beneath the weight of forgetting, was returning. Some resisted. They shouted of progress, of civilization, of systems that cannot be undone. But the world did not demand their submission, it only offered a choice. The tree, the first thing the astronaut had noticed, the first sign that the world was waking, stood once again before her, its golden leaves trembling in unseen currents. She placed her hand against its bark, and in that moment she felt the earth was not just returning to balance, it was evolving. The question was, would the people of Earth evolve with it? One by one, people began stepping forward. Some hesitated, some wept, but all who chose to remember felt it instantly, the unlocking of something vast and unknown within them. But truly, as more awakened, those who refused to change became desperate, and they would not let go without a fight. And so the battle for the future began. The resistance strikes back. For every step forward, there was resistance. The old world was not fading away quietly. Those who had ruled by fear and control saw what was happening, the cracks in their dominion, the unraveling of their carefully built illusion. They felt the earth shifting beneath them, no longer bending to their will, and they panicked. It began as whispers, as it always did, doubt sown like seeds in the minds of those who were uncertain. This is dangerous. This is chaos. This is a threat to everything we have built. And then came the attempts to reclaim control, laws, decrees, words sharpened like blades. The ones who were waking were called reckless, unstable, dangerous. The guardians of the old order branded them heretics of reason, threats to progress. But the most insidious attack came in the form of illusion. If they could not stop the awakening, they would distort it. They would offer their own version of awakening, one that looked like freedom, but was only another kind of cage. Let us guide you, they said. Let us harness this change. It was a familiar trick, a trap set in apparent golden light. For a moment, there were some that hesitated. Which path should we take? Is it wise to abandon a world that we had known? Can we trust this wild, untamed path ahead? They recognized that the old ways had been flawed, but they had also been what they had always known. The astronaut saw through it. She had spent lifetimes being silenced, shamed, manipulated into doubt. She recognized the hand of control, even when it was wrapped in silk. This time, she would not be fooled, so she stepped forward, and others followed. The world rumbled beneath their feet with recognition and renewal. Rivers of light surged brighter. The trees whispered their names. The sky opened into something vast and unknown. With every step, the illusion of the old world cracked a little more. They were no longer just witnesses to the shift. They were the ones rewriting reality. There were those who still feared the change, who clung to the old world, desperate to hold on to their power. And the resistance whispered to those, "This is dangerous. They are imagining things. You must stay in the world we created for you." They used everything they had, fear, manipulation, control, to stop the awakening. But it was too late. The ones who could see could not unsee. The ones who remembered could not forget. And so the astronaut stood at the edge of two realities, one fading, one rising. She knew there was no turning back. With her voice and the voice of others, with her truth and the truth of others, with her presence and the presence of others, they step forward. And as they do, the world steps with them. The age of remembering, a world that remembers. What once was invisible was now clear. The world had always been there for them to see. The land carried memories, the wind whispered truths, the rivers shimmered with stories long buried but never lost. And then, the greatest revelation of all, reality itself was responding to the will of the people. And the illusion of the old world faded, while something extraordinary began to happen. People started to envision ideas they've never had before, fully formed inventions, solutions to problems that once seemed impossible to fix, and insights that feel like they've been waiting in the ether for centuries. One night, a research scientist woke up in the middle of the night with a blueprint for a technology that could clear polluted waters in mere moments. On another day, children, unburdened by the limitations of the past, began to sing songs to teach others how to heal. There were even farmers who suddenly knew where to plant, sensing the land's energy and bringing forth abundant harvests. As just a few examples of the extraordinary changes that were taking place. As cities harmonized with nature, music began to unlock hidden knowledge, schools were built to nurture gifts, and there was a deep remembering of how to connect with the earth, not work against it, using energy that did not deplete, but was restorative. For so long, people had hidden their deepest truths out of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear of standing alone. But now, people speak and they are heard. There are no more masks, there's no more pretending, there's no more suppression of the soul's deepest knowing, and other people listen, not just to reply, or to be polite, but to understand. There were new communities forming to meet disagreements with curiosity, not conflict. And because there was embedded trust, there was no need to dominate, manipulate, or to control. Of course, it was not a utopia. There were still challenges, struggles, and moments of doubt, but now communities faced these challenges together. No one was cast aside, no one was silenced, and because of that, the world flourished in ways no one imagined possible. The world, 20 years later. The air is clear and bright. The rivers, once choked with pollution, now run crystal blue, teeming with life. Forests have returned, not by force, but by choice. Cities still exist, but they are nothing like before. Buildings breathe, covered in living plants, filtering air naturally, generating clean energy from the sun and wind. There's no wasted space. Rooftop gardens become refuges and sanctuaries for both people and animals. There are no landfills. Everything is repurposed, restored, or returned to the earth. Transportation is effortless, silent, efficient, woven into the fabric of life, and no longer harming, but enhancing. And the people, they have changed the most. Children are born without fear. Their first instinct is not to hide, but to create. The elderly are honored, seen as keepers of wisdom, their voices shaping the future. Art, music, and storytelling are woven into daily life, teaching through experience. Conflict still exists, but is met with open dialogue, not violence. People no longer hoard wealth because abundance is shared. There is no need to take what is already freely given. And the astronaut, the one who once carried the weight of loneliness, she stands at the center of it all, not as a ruler, not as a savior, but as one of many who chose to step forward, to speak and to create. Her wounds are no longer chains. They are the metaphoric soil from which something new has grown. She places her hand on a tree, the same tree she once thought had never existed. It is fully grown now, its roots deep and its branches reaching for the sky. And she knows This is the world she was meant to live in. Not a perfect world, not a utopia, but a world that remembers, a world that listens, a world that creates, a world that chooses healing. And so the story does not end. It simply continues.